always Cefalu, and today I want to give you some tips about using applique in your border and maybe how to space those applique shapes and how to attach them to your border. I have a little border strip here, and these are the applique shapes that I'm working with. These are from the Raja Quilt Block of the Month for 2016. And I want to place these on this border strip, and first of all, they have 4 points on them, and I want them to be in the center of this border. So all you need to do is fold it in half, and you can iron it or put a little finger crease in here. And this is going to give you a nice line to put those points of the applique pieces on. And then I don't know, I think you can see that. And then I also want to find where the center of it is this way. So I'm going to just fold it in half again, going this way. And we'll put another finger press in there. There we go. So I can take one of my pieces. I've got 5 of them total. So this is going to go right here in the center. So I can kind of line up the points on my creases here and here. So I have this space here on this side, and I want to fit 2 of these shapes in here. So I can visually just make sure the spacing in between each one looks good. And that's easy to do on a small strip like this, but when you've got a really long border, you might want to consider doing some math. Not always our favorite thing, but I can measure across the width of these from point to point, and they're about 3 3/4 inches wide, and I've got 2 of them. And the space between here and here, with that 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to leave a little edge here, is 10 inches. So 10 inches, subtracting 2 of these at 3 3/4 is going to give me 2.5 inches of extra space. And I want to divide the 2.5 inches into these 2 open areas, and that would be 1 1/4 inches apart. So then I can take a ruler or a measuring tape, whatever you want to use, and then actually do a better job of getting these exactly 1 1/4 inches apart from each other. And then I would do the same thing on this side. So there's a mathematical way to do it and just a visual way to do it. Next, I want to talk about how to actually adhere your applique shapes onto your border, and it really depends on the type of applique that you're using. Next, I want to talk to you about different types of applique and how those are going to affect your decisions and how you're going to place those onto your borders. So let's go ahead and take a look. So I've got a applique shape here that is going to be raw edge machine appliqued, and I'm using a fusible web product. And the one that I'm using for this is Quilter Select Applique, and this is a great product because it allows you, it's got a double-sided fusible surface, but when you peel the paper back on this one, it's sticky. So you can temporarily, get all the paper off here. You can temporarily place this where you want it before you fuse it into place. So I can put it there, and then if I don't like it there, I can pick it up and easily move it around. So that's a real advantage to that particular product. But if you're doing fusible web, that's basically what you'll be working with. And so I've got a couple of other ones here that are going to be fused into place, but you may be doing a different type of applique, and this one is a turned edge. So I've previously turned the edges of my applique shape, and then this is going to get placed and either hand appliqued down, or I could still do it by machine. But there's no fusible on here. So for this one, I've got to put it in place. Either I could use these little applique pins And these are short little pins, and I could just pin these in place. And the other option that I like even better is using a basting glue, and this one is called Roxanne's Glue Baste It, and this will go on the back side, and I would run a little bit of glue around the edges. And when I do that, I want to make sure that I don't have it right next to this folded edge, because that's where I'm going to be stitching, and I don't want to be stitching through glue, so I'm going to be keeping it closer to the raw inside edge. And I can put this around the shape and then put it in place. This is something that will be washed out, so if I needed to, I could still move this around, but it gives you a really good adhesion once you've glued it on. So that's how I would place my appliques that are with a turned edge. Then there's one other option for some of you that are doing hand applique. You're going to be using perhaps a needle turn method, and with this method you're leaving yourself a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And these types of appliques are a little bit harder to place because you've got that extra seam allowance involved. So if I had a lot of these, I would want to maybe make some registration marks on my border to place these properly. Definitely when I'm doing something like this, I would start in the middle of my border strip and then work my way out in each direction. So I'd start with the middle, but you can also make a template of this particular shape. And let me just show you how I made my template. I've got some freezer paper, and I drew the shape onto freezer paper, and I'm going to put another layer of freezer paper on top of this. And my freezer paper has a flat side and a shiny side, and I would iron these two pieces together, and it just gives me a stiffer template to work with. And then once I've got those two pieces ironed together, I'm going to cut it out on that drawn line, and I'm going to get something like this. And this is a nice little template because I can use this to actually mark where I should position these shapes, and I can use maybe a blue water-soluble pen to mark those positions, but really make sure that this is going to come out of your fabric before you use it. You could even just mark out here in the seam allowance to give you something to line up these points with. Again, I have my crease here, so I really don't have to have any marks out here. You could also use a friction pen. This will iron out. Again, I would mark in the seam allowance, and you could just line up the points here. Once I'm done using this, I'd line up the points of this applique with those little registration marks. And then I could pin that in place and do my hand needle turn applique. So those are a few tips for using applique in your borders, and hopefully you'll have something to think about next time you go to use applique there. And if you're making the Raja quilt for the block of the month, I hope you're making some good progress, and we'd love to see what you're making on the TQS platform.